Hello everyone and welcome to Electron Empire. In this second episode of Know Your PC, we'll talk about CPUs and their characteristics. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to learn more about PCs, and without further ado, let's get started. So, how do you know the power of your CPU? There are multiple factors for this, and the first one is the frequency. The frequency, also called clock speed, is the maximum number of operations your CPU can do in a second. For example, a frequency of 5 GHz means that it can do 5 billion operations per second. Nowadays, a low-end CPU will often be over 4 GHz, while the fastest can almost reach 6 GHz. But the frequency is not the only thing that matters. The number of cores and threads is extremely important too. Cores are physical units which can be seen on the CPU, and threads are only virtual. Let me explain. Threads can be seen as a sequence of instructions that allow cores to process 2 operations at a single time instead of only one, which improves overall performance. In most cases, there are more threads than cores, such as 6 cores for 12 threads or 16 cores for 24 threads. So, if you add up your knowledge on frequencies with what you've just learned about cores and threads, you can guess that a CPU with 16 threads and a frequency of 5 GHz can do 16 operations at the same time 5 billion times per second. The cache memory is an extremely fast memory that is directly in the CPU, in which the CPU will store the most important data to access it quickly and often, which help a lot in gaming. There are 3 different types of cache: L3, L2 and L1, the L1 being the fastest and closest to the CPU, and the L1 being the slowest but also the most abundant. As cache memory costs a lot of money to create, it's contained in megabytes and sometimes even in kilobytes. Next, we have the lithography. It's basically the size of the transistors in the CPU. The lower the better, as smaller lithography will result in less overheating and less electricity consumption. When you see this or this, you don't understand anything, right? Well, after that part, you'll be a master at reading both Intel and AMD CPU names. We'll start with AMD. Here is a few examples. The Ryzen 3, 5, 7 or 9 at the beginning of the name is the brand modifier. It acts as ranks in a single generation, so in the same generation a Ryzen 9 will be more powerful than a Ryzen 7. The first digit defines the generation. In this picture, the Ryzen 5 5600 is from the Ryzen 5000 series, same goes for the other. The second digit is related to the brand modifier. For example, a Ryzen 5 will either have a 5 or 6 as its second digit. The third digit is either a 0 or a 5, whereas a 5 means the CPU is more powerful than a CPU with a 0. The letters at the end are pretty quick to explain. A X means that the frequency is slightly boosted, a 3D means that there is more cache, and a G means that there is an integrated graphics card to the CPU. The same reasoning works with Intel. From the 10th generation, the 2 first digits defines the generation. The E5, E7, etc. are the brand modifiers, and the third digit is related to it, just like in AMD. A F at the end means that there's no integrated graphics, a K means that the CPU is overclockable, and the S means that it's a special edition. In the last part of this video, we'll talk about generations. The generations are more important than the brand modifiers, as the 3rd gen i5 will be better than the 10th gen i9, because the i5 will be more recent. It also matters because it will define the socket. For example, any Ryzen 5000 will be on the AM4 socket, but Ryzen 7000 will only be compatible with AM5 sockets, and the same rule applies to Intel. And that's the end of this video on CPUs. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can learn more about computers. That was Electron Empire, and see you next time!